Welcome, everyone. This is our first live stream of a Gaming Through Themes episode. So Tiffany's here, Erock's here, John's here, I'm here, and our topic today is nature. So when we talk about themes, we're talking about the subject of a game. In this case, the subject is nature, which is a really broad subject that is open to a lot of interpretation, as you will see shortly. For me, I actually have two picks that are not exactly a spoiler, but nature in confinement, I guess is how I'll describe my two picks. So anyway.
It's a zoo out there.
Yeah. But at least half of it's a zoo out there. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I put together some pictures for the live stream, so we'll just go in the order of whatever these pictures I have is. I don't even remember. Now we're going to start with Tiffany right off the bat because I want to hear her interpretation of nature.
All right, so when I think of the theme nature, I think of just any game that takes place in nature where nature is a large part of your gameplay or your thematic experience. So for the first game, I feel like that I picked, you really feel the nature in the visuals on the tiles. And so the game that I picked was Cascadia. And in Cascadia, you get these tiles and these animals or these little I don't remember. It's like tiles and I think tiles and smaller tiles.
Yeah, I mean like round tiles.
Yeah, they're
Tiles
little
and tiles.
Like hex
And
tiles
pine
and round
cones.
tiles. And you take a pair and you build your ecosystem, and you're looking at the habitat that you're placing as well as the animal. And each habitat is going to be scored on how big it is. And then each animal is going to have a random card drawn to determine how it scores at the end of the game. And it might be like bears might need to be groups in threes, or the hawks might be everything between point A and point B of the hawks, or it's just different every time based on which cards you draw. And you try to build the best ecosystem that you can with the areas together so that you have the largest areas and masses of different types while still being able to meet the objectives for your animals. And I think that I don't think the theme is super strong as far as like nature goes, but because it's a pretty abstract game that you're just putting the theme on, I think. But I do think that by trying to build these large ecosystems and by each of the scoring ways that the animals score, like how they score, makes sense for that particular animal. So birds of prey are going to go like in a straight line, and they're going to kill everything in between. They're going to score points for everything in between the two, like end points. And it's clever how they created the scoring mechanisms for the animals and how you do it. So that was the first game that I picked for nature theme was Cascadia.
So, it's interesting you talk about this being sort of abstract, but, and I'll talk about this later with one of my picks as well. It is sort of abstract, it's very puzzly, but I would not play this game without the theme. If you took the theme away and it was like just purely an abstract, I wouldn't be interested. And I think because of the theme, I would play it, but also other people would play it. This is one of those games that I think borders on a gateway game. The scoring cards are a little maybe hard for people who are new to gaming to understand, but others it's just, take one of these tiles, take one of these animals, build your little area, and you may have to explain the scoring a few times, but it's very approachable and fun, and a lot of that is the theme to me.
I agree. I think that if you took the theme off, even though I don't think that it's necessarily like an integral part to the gameplay, as far as like the mechanisms aren't so tightly interwoven with the theme that you're just like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. But if you were to take the theme away and I don't know, change it to anything else, I don't think that it would be as good. I don't think that it would be as much fun. So
yeah, and
I definitely agree with you.
In fact, Neutral says here in the comments that despite not having played the game, it's one of his top picks for nature. So that just tells you how,
that's how good it is.
How enticing it is. And I will say they recently announced Cascadia landmarks or something. There's an expansion coming,
Ooh.
and I'm particularly intrigued because the only reason I don't own Cascadia is it only goes up to 4 players, but the expansion is going to go to 5 or 6, which I don't think is going to bog down the game really. And so I don't really know much about the extra stuff, the landmarks, that make up what the meat of the expansion. But I'm just interested in the 5 and 6 players. So yeah. Totally looking forward to that.
Just to be specific, it is about a very specific part of the country, actually. It's the Pacific Northwest. Like, it's like salmons and bears and hawks, like in that very particular ecosystem, as it were. So I think it fits the theme really well. I mean, I hear you. It's not incredibly like woven into it and all, but even some of the animals I think are really cool. Like you said, like the hawks between each other because they're flying, that makes sense. The salmon, usually it's a string of them. I mean, it's like they're going up the rivers. That makes sense. I mean, I don't know why an antelope want to make a ring, but
Well, and there's multiple scoring cards for the animals, so I'm not sure all of them make as much sense, but
right. Some of them are just gamey.
Yeah, those default ones are pretty good. Yeah.
Gamey.
Yeah. And on that note, let's see who's up next. Oh, we're gonna go over to John for John's number 1.
All right, so I gotta disagree with Tiffany. I think her pick is a terrible pick, and it's the worst game she could possibly pick. So my better pick is Cascadia.
Neutral, Tiffany, John, Cascadia.
I think hands down, if you had everybody play all the nature games possible, I think Cascadia would be number 1 on the list at the end of the day by a large majority of people. The artwork is beautiful. It's simple. It's evocative. It's fun to try to puzzle out. There's so much variety because of those different scoring cards she was talking about. It just is. It's one of my favorite games. It's in my top 25 list, and it's easily just hands down the best nature game by far. It's just so far above any other choice to me that it's a shoe in at number 1.
Well, we have the people's picks later. So
Yep.
And spoiler alert, at the very end, I also asked Google Bard, it's AI, what were some good nature games. So I've got those to include as well. All right, cool. So yeah, this is just the video about Cascadia. You could just leave now. No, I'm just...
What's your favorite game named Cascadia?
Yeah, right. All right, Erock, is it Cascadia?
Well, to be honest, it was really hard to not put Cascadia on this list, really. And shout out also to Wingspan, which may be mentioned at some point in here, because those two are really awesome games that really fit the theme. But for my first pick, I'm going to go with Ark Nova. Now, might be a little controversy here because it's a zoo setting, but I feel like
that's nature.
Because
it's all animals.
You wouldn't go to a zoo if it didn't have the nature.
Exactly, yes. That's why I believe this is an excellent choice as my number 1
If you put a fence
choice.
around a reserve, it's still a beautiful nature reserve.
Exactly, yes. Plus, I think they kind of lean into it here because half of the game is basically environmental projects and conservation efforts and things like that. So I think it really does kind of, shake hands with it along the way. Yes, you're making a zoo, but you're also doing all these other projects for conservation efforts and things like that. Just very, very brief rundown. I'd be here 45 minutes if I was trying to tell you how to play the game, but very brief rundown. You're building a zoo. You use cards to do that, and the action mechanism in this game is fantastic. You have 5 action cards. They're in slots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can use any one of them that you want at any point in time, but the higher up on the numbers they are, the more powerful they become. And then when you use it, you pick it up, move it to the end, and slide the other ones down to fill in. It's absolutely fantastic. That's really the hook in this game, is trying to work that action selection mechanism so that you're getting the most efficiency out of the actions that you're doing. Because just as an example, like, you don't always need to do action at level 5. If I'm only going to put 1 animal out, I don't have to wait till I build up so far that I can put 2 animals out if I can't actually afford those animals. So I'm kind of wasting efficiency if I do it that way. Whereas if I hit it at the right moment, that's where the efficiency lies. I really enjoy this game. It's kind of long. There are 1 million cards in it. For anybody interested in it, the one downside, if you were, that most people complain about is just the fact that there are so many different cards. You can't really rely on some of the combos coming out, but that doesn't bother me because I just like this kind of game where it's kind of a tactical, what do I have right now? What can I do about that? I'll plan just a tiny little bit in the future with what I have, but I'm really open to changing what I've got going on to fit the situation. And I think this is an excellent game for that. And my number one is Ark Nova.
Yeah, I really want to play Ark Nova. I don't want to own it because it's a little long for me and my group. I'm really intrigued. People have been comparing the new game Earth to Ark Nova, saying it's
Yeah, I agree.
sort
It's
of that
high on my
experience
list
at
of things
half,
I want to play.
half the
Yeah, I've heard a
time.
lot of that. Like,
Yeah.
Earth's really awesome. You should play Earth. I'm like, okay, fine, when it releases or whatever.
Well, it is released, and unfortunately, I didn't get to play it before this video was made. Maybe it would have made my top two, but my copy of Earth decided to take FedEx decided to take it on a tour of Ocala, Florida. It's been there for a couple of days, just
Somebody's
circling
playing it.
around. Yeah, maybe.
I got my Earth a few days ago, but I haven't had a chance to play it. I'm hoping to. It does seem to be Wingspan meets Ark Nova, but only in an hour and a half instead of 3 hours plus Prestige, which is Ark Nova. And I own Ark Nova. I really do enjoy it. But you're right. That deck, they included every animal that's ever existed, and it is in that deck. And there's something called a petting zoo that you can build, and it can only hold 3 petting zoo animals. And I played a game once where I had 2 in my hand, and I started a petting zoo turn 1, and I never got a third petting zoo animal because the deck is just that voluminous that it never came up. So it does have that downside. It is a long play, but it does have some really neat mechanics to it. It's got some really great artwork on it. It is absolutely worth the play, especially if you like terraforming Mars or Earth.
All right. Hey, Ichiban has joined us also in the chat. You might remember from the Discord channel. The Discord channel is also where I've been complaining about my copy of Earth taking a tour of Ocala. Neutral also mentioned photosynthesis, so I'm not going to say where, but spoiler alert, photosynthesis will show up later. Oh, hey, look, it's me. I'm next. Steven's number 1. I have to try to see if I can remember what order I put these in. But okay, so I mentioned before that my picks are all about nature confined. And this is a pick that I think I missed one of our lists earlier. The pick was water, and I wanted to use this one for water. But this is Kohaku. And this is the game that when I was just talking about Cascadia and Tiffany saying it was abstract, this game is very abstract. It's just a puzzle about putting the things by the things that score the things. But I would not play this game if it were not for the theme. And the theme is a koi pond. So, I mean, koi ponds are obviously man-made. I mean, sort of like a zoo. But what do you fill it with? You fill it with nature, lily pads and fish and etc. And that's what makes it beautiful and relaxing, etc. If you didn't have the fish in there, it'd just be a ditch of water in your backyard, right? So, so anyway, but as I mentioned, it's very abstract. So you have to, on your turn, you take 2 tiles from this central board that everybody is drafting from. You have to take a feature, which is something like a frog or a lily pad or a statue or something, and you have to take a fish. And the fish are usually multicolored, 2 different colors. There are some that are a single color and they have a coin, which is the point. And they might have little baby fish or dragonflies on the tile as well. And all of those things score according to the different stuff. So you have flowers that score when you put the right color fish next to them. You have butterflies that score all the fish in the row that are a certain color. The frogs want to eat the dragonflies, and the little rocks is where the baby fish, hide next to. So, it's another one of those games. It's also sort of unintentionally mean because you'll be looking at the board and you'll be like, ooh, I need that color fish, or ooh, I need that tile with the 3, and then somebody will either take the tile that you wanted, or because the tiles get slightly rearranged when somebody takes something, it might separate sort of the 2 that you were hoping to pick, even if they didn't pick those 2. So the one you wanted, it may now not be in where you wanted it either. You have to take neighboring things. So it's very easy to teach, and it's very easy to score. It's a pretty quick game, and everybody the art's beautiful. I have the version with the multi-layered acrylic tiles, so it has a sort of 3D effect, but they did print a inexpensive cardboard version not that long ago, and that's good value for the money. Actually, if it didn't sell out, you can find it. It's like $25 or something, and I think it's a great game. There's a little mini expansion called Sundials. I think they're going to make another, like a full-on expansion for it as well. So Anyway, I totally recommend it. We actually did a preview of this way back before it went on Kickstarter. And I remember thinking this is a great game, which is why I backed it and got a copy, etc. So anyway, that is my number one pick, and that is Kohaku. Which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm just going with it.
Sorry.
It means like koi in Japanese or goldfish in Japanese or something. I don't know. So if you know somebody who speaks Japanese, ask them. All right. So next up is Erock. Let's go back to Erock for his number 2.
Hello, welcome back to the Erock Show. For my second pick today, I'm going with Arboretum. Arboretum is a card game that is basically about, well, setting up an arboretum, which is basically just a park of trees. This game is brutal. It will melt your brain, which is really impressive for just having a deck of cards, right? The deck of cards is basically what, 1 through 15 of a bunch of different types of trees, right? All right. Oh yeah, it's like 1 through 9, right? And then the 1 cancels out the 9, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
this picture, it looks like 1 through 9 on this picture.
Anyway, yes, that's 1 through 9 of a whole bunch of different kinds of trees, like poplar trees or elm trees or oak trees or whatever. But there's a couple of things going on in this game that make it super difficult. All right. So first of all, at the beginning of every one of your turns, you're going to draw 2 cards. Now there's a deck in the middle of the table that's, just a face down deck. You can absolutely draw off that deck. However, everybody has in front of them their own personal discard pile. So that means if you're playing a 4-player game, there are 5 decks to draw from. There are 4 face-up ones in front of everybody and the face-down one, right? So you're going to draw 2 cards. The face-up decks are just as valid as the one in the middle, and as you draw off the face-up decks, it also exposes the cards underneath them. So in theory, you could drill down into somebody's discard pile to get the things that you're looking for, in theory, right? So you draw 2 cards from all of this. You play 1 card in front of you, and then you discard 1 card to your discard pile. The way the game works is you're trying to get runs of these different tree types, and you get bonus points if they're all in the same tree. So like if I have 3 through 7 all elms, I'm going to get bonus points for them all being elms. The important point is you have to start at a number that's a tree that matches a higher number of a tree, and you have to go through like this line of trees to get there. So I might have like a 2 elm, and then like a 3 poplar, and then a 4 fir, and then a 5 poplar, and then a 6 elm. Well, I got my run. I started with 1 and I ended with the same number, and I get to count them all in there. But like I said, if they were all elm, then I would get bonus points for that. If I had I forget what it is. If I have the 1 in there, there's a bonus point for that. If there's 9 in there, it has the bonus points for that. But here's the other trick of this. At the end of the game, you only get to score the runs of which you have the most points still in your hand. So this makes it incredibly hard, because not only am I trying to put down these runs in these certain trees, but I have to keep enough in my hand to have the most points of those when the game ends so that I actually get to count them. Meanwhile, you get to see everybody else building their little arboretums out there, and every time you discard, it's a heart attack. Every time. Because you're loading somebody else up, and most of the time you can see who. You're like, I can't put that down. If I put that down, Steve's going to grab it. It's going to increase his run. If I put that one down, Tiff's going to grab it. If I put this down, I need that, and then it's going to get buried, and I'm never going to see it again. Everything you do in this game is a panic attack. It's a heart attack, because it's so brutal, and it doesn't feel like it, and it doesn't look like it until you're about 3 turns into the game, and you're like, I don't know what to do right now. I just don't know what to do, because all the options suck right now. I love it. It's so brutal and brain burning. I just think it's fantastic.
I think this has got to be one of the most misleading games of all time, because you look at it and you're like, oh, it looks like I'm just building my own little forest with these pretty trees. But then you read the rule book and watch a video maybe on how it's played, and you're like, oh, this is a brain burner. This is going to induce AP in people. And then you're like, oh, and it's mean, because people are going to be like, I'm going to take that, make sure to score the points in that so they don't score that run, or I'm going to take this card they need, or whatever, make sure that it doesn't go in the discard pile so somebody can get it or whatever. Like, I don't remember all the details, but I bought this game. I think maybe Prime Day on Amazon. It was like $3 or $4. I was like,
It's super cheap.
nice
It's just a deck of cards.
yeah.
Yes, it's
So
just a deck of cards.
I got it, and then I maybe did an unboxing on the channel. I don't remember. And then I read the rules and all that, and I was like, oh, my group is going to hate this. And so I donated it to a charity, one of those charity boxes I do every year, games and stuff. So without even playing it, I was just like, "Oh, this is not going to get to the table. Sorry, maybe I could play it at a con."
Well,
or
we
something,
have it. You
but...
can play with us because it's
Yeah.
fantastic. I swear, you cannot play this game with the minimum of one time. At some point in the game, your brain literally melts because it's just too much going on to try to figure out.
Yeah,
to
I have
play,
people
what
in
to
my game
discard.
group who would seize up, and I'd have to reboot them, and it would take 10 minutes for them to take their
Little
turn.
drool coming out the side. Like,
Yeah, it would not go well.
It's one of those games that it would be the hardest game you played all month if you played it solo, and then you add in the player interaction, and you're just like,
right.
because just doing your own thing, building your own tableau, and being able to score them like you think they're going to score, that alone is super challenging. And then you got to worry about what 3 other people are doing. It's tough. I love it. We have it as well. It's on the shelf. It's a great game, but you can only break it out with a specific set of people because they have to love that brain burn. They have to be okay with somebody discarding a card they need and then it getting buried, that kind of thing. And at the end of it, you just kind of walk away from the table and you're like, I need a minute. I gotta decompress from what just happened.
I don't think I've ever played this game and anybody at the table went, "Let's play again."
No,
Does not work that
you're
way.
like, give me a month. We'll try that again.
Yeah.
If you are watching the live stream and you have played this game, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Particularly, I'm curious about this one, but any of the games, feel free to comment on them. All right, and looks like we're going to go back to Tiffany. Now, Tiffany, I thought I knew what your number 1 was going to be. I guess it's probably going to be your number 2. And, well, I will save my comments until the end.
Yeah, so I'm a rule breaker. And when I was told that this was not a nature game, I said, you can take your definition of nature and shove it because this is the most naturiest game I think that there is in existence. And that game, if you think of a game that's got twigs and pebbles and all of the components that from nature that are in the game,
A big tree that you assemble.
A giant tree, yes, holds your cards for you and your little squirrel meeples while they wait for winter. It's Everdell, of course. Everdell is the game I'm talking about. But what more nature-themed game is there than Everdell? Where
one that takes place on Earth?
It's on Earth. It's just a fantastical Earth.
If you threaten to punch Steven in the face or play Everdell, he'd go, "Do I get to pick the cheek? Do I get to pick which one?" Like,
it's so good. You've got cards. It's a tableau builder, so you've got cards in front of you that you're trying to place and build your little community. And some have spaces on them that you can use because it's a worker placement, and those spaces can be available to other people. So there are the worker placement spots on the board, but then as people build their tableau, more spots become available for you to choose from, and you just try to build up your resources so that you can complete objectives and score points. But it's so much fun and it's so cute in the process. And aside from the twigs that came in the first edition that would just roll off your table and that drove me crazy, aside from those, this game is like perfect. And I feel bad that it's not my number 2, but Cascadia is just a little bit easier to get to the table than Everdell, especially now that we have the giant box with all of the expansions and everything in it. It's a bit of a beast, but Everdell.
See, I want to go the other way because I actually am interested in playing whatever is My Little Everdell, that new game.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, probably the next chance I will get to play it, because I don't even know if it's going to be out before then, is Dice Tower Con, and we'll all be there together. So maybe we should try that, because I think there's a lot of promise in Everdell, and I also wish it were shorter, and I think maybe that My Little Everdell is going to deliver what I want in a game.
see, I own Everdell, and I love Everdell, and I don't pull it off the shelf anymore since the last time I played Everdell with Steven.
Aw.
No, he's. It's not because of Steven, though. He's absolutely right with his criticisms because there are downsides to the game, and I find it the hardest game to teach and have people wrap their head around it. And it's not that it's difficult, it's there's a lot of little combos of you play this, it chains into this, you're looking for this, you only have 15 cards, oh, and there's a little bit of take that to it, and there's just so much stuff going on with it that it is hard to get to the table for those reasons. So I love the game, but I don't even try anymore because I already have enough games that I want to get to the table more often than I do. I don't want one that afterwards people are going to go, I wish I didn't play that.
I think the main problem is that most of the game is actually on the cards themselves. So, like, you teach the structure of the game, but nobody really understands at that point because the cards really have a lot of the effects. Like, all right, she's right. We have the giant box now, so we have like all kinds of stuff going on and all that. But the very first version of the game, the rule book was like 3 pages because really it was like, these are the actions, this is what you do, and here's the end of the game. But everything's on the card. So it's really hard to just send somebody off with their own private hand of cards and say, all right, it's your turn, without kind of getting into a whole lot of what's going on. I think if you can get past that, the game's fantastic. But I think it is a hurdle.
I think it's that combined with the fact that the cards all combo together that induces serious AP in people. Yep. So if you have people that are prone to AP, I wouldn't play this game with them. Neutral
Plus, at the same time, you know, it doesn't help that. And I love this game. I think it's really good. So I'm just saying, I don't think it also helps that you have your hand of cards and all the cards in the meadow can be played also. So now you're looking at like 12 cards that you could potentially play at any point in time. So it just kind of adds to that, you know, front loaded burden on it. But again, I think if you can get past that and play a few times, I think it's fantastic.
So I don't know how the solo works, but Neutral said it was pretty good solo. And I could see that. I could see if I could just be playing that game sort of myself, then I think maybe
stumble across the combos.
Yeah, and I would burn the skunk card, of course. But yeah.
It's my favorite genre game. Like Erock was saying, the game's simple. The game has nothing to it. The game lives in the cards, and I love those kind of games. But they're difficult because some people don't like surprises, and they don't like playing cards, and they go, well, what's this card? That's amazing. I wish I'd have known about this card, and it changed. And I can understand that. But like Erock said, if you get like 2 plays under your belt and you kind of get a grasp, go, okay, I can know what I can expect card-wise from this, and I know what's going on. I think if people can do that, they'll really get into it. And the expansions add a lot of cool stuff to it as well. So I wish it were easier to get to the table. I understand why it's not, but I also love Everdell.
All right, cool. So what do we have next after Everdell? We have my number 2. And so continuing on with my theme of nature confined, I am also picking a zoo game, except the zoo game that I'm picking is called Zooloretto. And again, this goes back to I wouldn't play this game without the theme. So there is a version of this game without the theme called Coloretto. Or it's not exactly the same, but it's, similar.
It's basically the same.
And I mean, Coloretto is a fine game, and I've played Coloretto, but I don't know why you would ever play Coloretto when you could play Zooloretto. And in Zooloretto, and you can see here on the screen, I've got these 3 trucks at the bottom. And that is really the center, the heart of the game is those trucks. Because on your turn, you either take one of those trucks or you draw something out of the bag and put it on one of the trucks. I mean, there's some other stuff where you can spend coins and do stuff. But the heart of the game is put something on a truck or take a truck. And it's sort of an agonizing decision because if you don't take a truck, now everybody else is going to have a chance to take one before you do. And if you draw something cool out of the bag, you might be adding it to it. You can't just put it on the truck that you want because if you make that truck too good, somebody else is going to take it. But then you put a cool thing on a truck, somebody else is going to take that one. So what are you going to do with this? It does have some interesting, some cool mechanisms where you can put stuff on a truck that is bad for certain people. Because they won't be able to fit it into one of their fields, one of their paddocks in their zoo, and it'll have to go in their barn, and that could potentially be negative points at the end of the game. But I really like that decision space when I'm playing. Like, am I going to draw? Where should I put this? Should I take a truck? I mean, I have seen people take a truck with just one thing on it instead of being full with 3, and that's fine. plenty of times I've seen two, a truck with two things on it go, because those might be the two specific animals you need, and you don't want somebody else to put some crap on that truck that's going to screw you, So, yeah, I really like this game. I wouldn't play it without the nature theme. And again, I think zoos count in the nature theme because that's why you go to a zoo, to see all the nature. This here it says King of the Beasts edition of Zooloretto. That's the version that I have. Sort of a disappointing edition, really. All it does is it adds lions, but you have to take something out to add the lions in. So it's just like a promo almost in the game. I even based one of my own game designs on this mechanic with the trucks and stuff from Zooloretto. So yeah, big
That's
fan.
what I was thinking when you said that.
Yeah, my cursed design that's been signed by 3 publishers and then returned to me, and I'm giving up on. So whatever.
Well, I enjoy it.
That's another story. Not nature themed, that one though. Yeah, maybe that's my problem. Should have
Tune in for the after show.
Yeah, right. All right. What do we got up next? We're going with John's number 2. What do you got, John?
So for my number 2, it's not. I usually prefer medium weight games, and this is more of a lightweight game, but that also has 2 things going for it. That it's easy to teach and introduce to other people, and it usually has great graphics on it. It looks amazing. It's got cool components, and what I went with was parks. Because the entire theme of it is that you are walking through a park and you are collecting different resources and taking pictures, stuff like that. And it's a really simple game, which is not the ones I typically go for, but it really is evocative of that nature theme. You feel like you're going to a park and you're doing all the activities that you would. And it's just like you said, if it wasn't nature themed, if it was just an abstract, I would never play this game a second time. It just doesn't have a ton going for it. But it's got enough strategy in it and enough things that you're trying to do and trying to get to the different point cards before anyone else. So it's got a little bit of the and now I'm going to blank on the game where you could play the cards to cubes. Yes, it's got a little bit of that Century thing to it, but with a lighter feel. So I think it's a great gateway game and a way to introduce people to and go, oh, you like parks? Well, let's get you on over to Century so you can see how that mechanic kind of gets escalated to the next level. So partially because of that, partially because the theme really just does come through and the game is beautiful. The components are really nice, and all of that combined, I just think that Parks is probably my second favorite nature game. Whereas if it were an abstract, I wouldn't give it the time of day.
No, this game is beautiful. Yeah. And
I agree. This is on my short list for sure. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I think the theme is incredibly specific that makes this game sing. It's just really, I agree 100% with you, John. Anybody who's watched us knows I like complicated and long games. I like this game. This is not any of that. It's not complicated. It's not long. But every time I play it, I'm like, man, I had a good time playing it. And, part of that is just, looking at pictures and reading about the parks as you play the game. I mean, it's just super cool. I really like it. Good choice.
It's funny you guys talk about this being light and a gateway game. They actually made a lighter version of this game called Trails.
That's
Trails
true.
is good too.
Yes.
We have both Parks and Trails and the Parks expansion. Yeah.
Oh, I find it sort of surprising that you would have Trails and Parks because they are very similar to me. And like you said, Parks being a gateway, I don't know when you would bring out Trails, right?
Mostly, so my wife goes up and visits her family and takes games with her to play, and they love playing new games. Like, they like the games that they get to play, but they're always like, hey, do you have any new games? So, like, Trails came out. It was evocative of Parks. They liked Parks. So it was really for that reason. But it's also a small box game, and I'll buy just about any small box game if I like the concept of it, because it's super easy to store. If I don't like the game, it's super easy to gift, and especially if it's kind of that gateway game or one that it's just like, oh, you're new to board gaming, or we're just like hanging out and doing something, doesn't take up a lot of table space, and people can have a good time. So it's got all those things going for it, whereas you're right, you probably don't need both, but we got it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I played Trails. Maybe I played your copy, actually. And
Possible.
I was like, hey, that was a good game, but I already own Parks, so...
Yeah.
All right, cool. With the Nightfall expansion, I think they still don't have all of the parks. Still, right?
I
There's still room.
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of national parks out there. Go visit them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indoors.
Get all the
by
stickers.
us. All right, well, that is all of the number one and number two from all of us. So we are going to move on to the people now. And of course, the people's number one. I mean, when I made this list, I knew, no question, this was going to be the people's number one. This was going to be the first thing a lot of people thought of. And of course, that is the answer to any board game question, which is Wingspan. Wingspan, a lot of people will say just anything about it, right? Art, components, theme, mechanisms. I disagree with people who say it's a good gateway game. I think it's too complicated for that. And I know from personal experience people who have bought the game thinking it just because they liked birds and stuff and couldn't figure out how to play it. But essentially, you're collecting a bunch of birds and you're putting them in your aviary. And it has this mechanism where you have different things that you can do on your turn, like, lay eggs or draw cards, or I can't remember what all the actions are. And when you do that action, you get to trigger in order the abilities of all the birds in that row. So all those birds that you've put in there. And then there are different scoring mechanisms that you have. So you're competing for maybe the most birds that have a round nest, or the most eggs on birds with round nests, or something like that, right? So there's all these different reasons to have these cards. The birds are worth points. They match different scoring opportunities. They have different abilities that might combo things for you. And as you add the birds to your tableau, to your aviary, it sort of makes each action more powerful. Interestingly, and I like this about the game, I like this in the design space, you lose essentially an action every round. So your actions are getting more powerful, but then you have less of them. So I think that keeps the pacing of the game right. If you didn't lose those actions, I think the game would maybe overstay its welcome a little bit. So yeah, definitely a pretty game. The little eggs are beautiful. It has this birdhouse dice tower that's completely irrelevant. You don't need it. But it's just one of those, let's have some central standout component thing that Stonemaier likes to do. And, that's another thing, Stonemaier games, they have a lot of fans because of their productions of their games. So
yeah, their production value is really good, man. You get a Stonemaier game, you're getting quality in that game. You don't have to go out and get a bunch of stuff to make it pretty. Stonemaier makes good games. They're pretty when you get them. Shout out to Stonemaier. And 100%. As far as it goes, I agree. I agree with the people. It's not my number one, but it's Wingspan, man. It was the first game that came to my mind when we said nature. I was like, well, Wingspan. I mean, I had to really kind of winnow it down to not have Wingspan on my list. Not like I did that on purpose, but I'm just saying it was that close. It's a really good game.
Yeah,
it's about birds.
Every single one of those cards is an individually illustrated bird. And there's a lot of cards.
Is this a new game? Is it coming out soon? I've never heard of it.
I'm sure there's Wingspan something coming out soon because there's an expansion every year for it.
My Little Wingspan, right?
If you look up ubiquitous in the dictionary, it's got a picture of Wingspan.
Not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I think this is a different kind of a gateway game. I don't think this is a gateway game in the sense that it's a simple play and a simple teach and you bring people into the hobby. I think this is a game that people are determined to learn if they want to. And that becomes like a gateway game to them because there are so many people playing this game in the world that you would it's beyond, it's a medium weight game. This is not a light game. I agree 100%. This is not, I know gamers that struggle with a couple of the little nitpicky rules and what does this bird do again? Let alone somebody off the street that would buy this at a Target or whatever, or Barnes and Noble or whatever, and sit down and try to figure this out. So,
yeah, well, I don't know. My objection is based on, I played Wingspan several times, and and I've taught it a few times, and there are two specific people that I can think about here. That one was, like I said, she bought it because she likes games, she likes birds, she takes photographs of birds. She bought it and she could not make heads or tails of it, right? And she just happened to mention it when we were talking one day, the wife of one of my good friends, and I was like, well, why don't you come over? We'll play it with my wife. The four of us will play it, and I'll teach you how to play it. Right? So she couldn't figure it out on her own. Maybe she could have found a YouTube video or something and then figured it out. But, I taught it to her and we played it. It's fine. And then there's another time I played it with some people who had never played it. And someone who was in my gaming group, plays a lot of different games with us, was just having trouble with the whole, wait, so now I have a card here, so this costs this much. And then when I do this, I trigger then this, then this, then this, then this. Like that engine building engine building is not really a gateway thing. I mean,
No, I agree.
because one, even once you
plan
sort of
and like chain things together,
Well,
that's engine building. That's the whole point.
but it has two things, right? There's one, the actual mechanics of how the engine works, and then there's two, the deeper layer of strategy, understanding it. But you know, she was struggling with the actual how does the engine work in this game, right? And so it wasn't until the end of the game that she really understood it. And you know, she was just playing the game at my house, so it's not like she's gonna go home and play it. She doesn't even have the game, right? So I don't know. I just, based on those two, you know, experiences, I'm just like, this is not a great gateway game. I had an opportunity. There is a family that I give a game to every Christmas. You know, it's just what I do. Family that I know, and they're not hardcore gamers, but they on their own got Settlers of Catan and Pandemic, right? So they can handle some games. And I, you know, Wingspan was the hot thing, and I was like, oh, I bet they would like this game. And then I was like, but no, I went for something else. You know, like Cascadia. I would give them Cascadia. They would figure it out and they could play it. I would not give them Wingspan. I would teach them Wingspan. I would not give it to them, though. So
I'm gonna make some business cards up that say board game teacher and stand next to Wingspan at Target. It's a new business idea. I do want to echo what you said about the cubes. Getting one less cube every round is one of the most elegant board game designs I've seen, and I wish so many more games, because you have all the space at the beginning and then it narrows it down. Your strategy's locked in, your cube. So once everybody's gotten past that hump of like, what am I doing? The game just races to the end because of it. And I would love more of that.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. So can you guess what the surprise number 2 from the people is? Well,
Cascadia.
I bet you can, because it's Cascadia, right? So, you know, we've talked ad nauseum about Cascadia. But we did this poll a little while ago, actually, and I don't really remember. But I know Wingspan was far away number 1. I think Cascadia was basically a runaway number 2 as well. I don't even remember what the other games.
It makes sense. Like I said, Wingspan was the first one I thought of, and Cascadia was the second one I thought of. And then I had to actually think of other things and realize I think I like Ark Nova and Arboretum a little better than those games, but they were immediately to my mind. And I'll tell you what, for anybody listening or watching or whatever, if you've never played any of the games that we're talking about today, this is the one to get. Get Cascadia. I think you're going to enjoy it the most easily with the least amount of effort. It's a really, really great game.
I think Cascadia is going to be one of those evergreen games just right off the bat. I really do.
I don't know. Evergreens are always sort of hard to predict, but and I don't, and it also sort of relies on the publisher as well as the game.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. Because if they stop paying attention to it, then all of a sudden it's gone. That's just the way it goes.
True.
I mean, they need to be plugging it. They need to.
Let's say it like this. I think it deserves to be an evergreen. How about that?
Yeah, I agree. But anybody can play this game and have a good time.
You know, like I was talking about with Wingspan, it was in a birding magazine, I think maybe is where she saw it, right? So like Cascadia has to get in a national park magazine or something, and the publisher needs to support it.
That would really help.
It needs to get
they
into
should sell it at like the actual national parks and stuff.
Yeah, you know, there's that really complicated space game called Leaving Earth, but then they sell it at like Johnson Space Center or something, right? You know, like that's what you need. You need it to just break out of the little board game bubble to be a big hit like Wingspan. So
just a very quick warning to those at home. The sister game is Calico. I do not recommend Calico as a first like early gamer, man. That game is brutal. Play Cascadia.
If you were like, do you want to play Calico? I'd say, why don't we play something a little easier like Arboretum?
Right.
Calico is the most deceptive. It looks like the nicest, softest, kitten-filled game. It looks like a family fun time, and you get into it, and you're just like, you took that tile I wanted, and I hate you, and I will never forgive you.
You guys are ruining that list. We should do that as a list. But you guys are ruining it. Arboretum and Calico. By the way, Neutral says Mariposas, which I have not played, is easier to recommend over Wingspan. So that's about butterflies. Monarch butterflies, I think.
I like that game.
It's the sequel. Game. Yeah, it's
the same designer, right? Elizabeth Hargrave.
Yeah, exactly.
And
we like that game.
Yeah. Neutral also said that Terraforming Mars is called an evergreen, but now it's Ark Nova, which might be getting dethroned by Earth. I don't think Terraforming Mars is going away quite
Yeah, I don't
like some
either.
people talk about these games maybe being better than Terraforming Mars. I mean, personally, I think if anything has fired Terraforming Mars for me, it's Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. So, but I think Terraforming Mars still has some legs, and there's the dice game version of it hasn't even come out yet, right? That's coming. So
Yeah,
It's
then
going
you
to be
got-
around forever. It made such a huge splash. Like it
Yeah.
just made such a footprint, you know.
yeah, I don't
People
know
will be-
about forever, but it'll be there for a while. I mean, it's probably still in the Board Game Geek top 10 games of all time. Which some people, they're just getting into the hobby. They go look at that and they're like, wow. Well, let me just see
it's
what the
what-
best,
it's
best
like-
games ever are, and there's Terraforming Mars.
It's like 6 or 7 years old right now. It's still, and people still talk about it like it just came out. Like it still has that name recognition and relevance that games right now would struggle to have that came out a month ago.
I could have
know,
put
it's-
Terraforming Mars on this list.
Yeah,
Martian
I thought about
nature.
it. I thought about it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if we could have Everdell on this list, I could have Mars. That's at least a real place.
Mars isn't real. NASA just invented that to sell more space.
To sell more math.
Yeah. Oh, you want to eat Mars? You're gonna need all this math.
Yeah, that's right. Big math.
Get the math expansion pack. Algebra 2.
The big math conspiracy theory.
Big math.
All right. Well, so this next slide, it is a spoiler because I just have all the names of all the games on there. But so Google has gotten into the game of AIs that you can chat with, and theirs is called Bard, and it's really, really, really bad. It's really bad because it has the critical failure of all AIs, in which that it will confidently tell you things that are wrong. And so it's
I can
like-
do that for free. You don't need to pay for it.
yeah, it's like Wikipedia on steroids, right? But the other thing that I've noticed specifically about Bard, I've spent more time with Bard than any of the others, but it conflates things, as these neural network based things are prone to do. That's how they work, but it conflates proper nouns inappropriately. So, like for instance, I asked it about Just Got Played, and it responded that Stephen Bonacore runs the channel.
Right.
Because it saw that, well, Stephen Just Got Played and Stephen Bonacore, and so it didn't realize that Stephen Bonacore is its own thing that should only be talked about, not separated and combined with other things.
I got excited. I thought we got Bonacore to comment.
Hey, you never know. You never know. He could replace me any day. But I asked it I asked it about Tiny Epic games, and it kept conflating them. It was like Tiny Epic Dungeon : Still Forest or something like that, which is like an expansion to One Deck Dungeon. So it was just combining dungeon, whatever. And then I was like, try again, because you can hit the button, try again. Your answer sucked. And then it said something about Tiny Epic Western Legends. Yeah, there's Tiny Epic Western and there's Western Legends, but those are two atomic things. You can't just mush them together. And and then it said somebody wrote 2 different board game books. I was asking it about people to see what it knew, and it was like, this person wrote these 2 books that don't even exist. It's just amazing how bad Google Bard is. But having said that, I decided, what are the best nature-themed board games? And look at this list that it came up with. We've got Wingspan, we've got Parks, we've got Cascadia, right? We don't even need to make videos anymore. Just Google Bard can do it. But it also listed Trails, which I mentioned is like the light version of the light game
Somebody
Parks.
has to tell Google that you can't have both Trails and Parks.
It's better than Nature Game than Everdell.
Feed this video to it afterwards.
Shots fired.
And here's where my earlier spoiler shout out. It also listed Photosynthesis, which I think is, boy, talk about mean games.
Yes, this game is
Photosynthesis.
mean, man.
Yeah, that game is mean, but it is definitely nature themed through and through. That's oddly enough the game that makes me question, what do I mean by an abstract game? Because normally I just think an abstract game is a game without a theme. But if you were to ask me, is Photosynthesis an abstract game? My brain goes, yeah, it's abstract.
I think
but
it
it's,
is.
But it's totally thematic. Like everything
It
you
is.
do in the game is
Super
thematic. And all
thematic.
Growing
art
the
is
trees,
thematic.
the
and-
trees get in the way of the sunlight. Like, it's incredibly thematic as far as
Yeah,
it goes.
it's both incredibly abstract because it's this weird puzzle, and it's incredibly thematic. And so it makes me question, what do I mean when I say abstract game? Interestingly, I was talking to some other people about a game, and I think, John, you showed me this one at Dice Tower Con one time. Bosk was another one that was mentioned.
did, yeah.
That's another game that's...
I like Busk.
Yeah, yeah. That was an interesting game, along the same lines as Photosynthesis, anyway. But yeah, there you go. Let me know in the comments, in the live comments, or in the comments of this video later, whether you think I should continue to include Google Bard results in here, whether I should only include them if they're good, or also include them if they're hilarious and non-existent, because that will happen at some point. But it did a pretty good job here. Were there any other nature-themed games that you were surprised didn't make somebody's list, or that you really would have wanted to include, but you only get 2 picks, so you didn't include? Anybody have anything else?
I'll give a shout out to Habitats. I think Habitats is fantastic. I still enjoy that game a lot, and it's basically the same as Zoo. You're just putting out, or I guess it's more like Zooloretto, really, in the end. You're just putting out tiles of animals that need specific animals next to them. It's always high on my list somewhere because I just really like that design. So that's a shot. I'm not surprised it didn't make other people's list, because it's not like Terraforming Mars. It's not like everybody in the world has played Habitats. I get it. But I just think it's really cute. It's a lot of fun to play. So that's kind of my shout out game.
Yeah, I think every game I expected to be listed was. I don't think there's a ton more to really choose from. It's not a broadly filled niche, right? Like there's some, the ones that you really think of, and there's not really a bunch of them beyond that. Meadow was one I expected could be on the list, but it wasn't included. But I didn't really expect it. I played the game and it didn't really go over great for me, so I didn't really expect that one. Everything else that I expected to be on the list was mentioned, and sometimes 3 or 4 times.
Indeed.
Hey, That's My Fish and Hive got shout outs in the comments. So Hey, That's My Fish is actually pretty fun. I introduced that to my kids a long time ago. There's another game that feels very abstract. Hive also does. My problem with Hey, That's My Fish is it actually takes a long time to sort of set up, just to put all of the pieces together, and then you play the game and it's usually pretty quick. So yeah, that turns me off on it a little bit. I don't own Hive, but Hive is a game that I didn't super enjoy. It's very abstract.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. There are people that really love Hive. I was not a big fan. I was like, nah, I get it. This bug jumps over that bug. I don't care.
I really like Hey, That's My Fish. If you want it in a less fiddly setting, though, there's a game called Ninja Camp, where it's like a bunch of cards with like monkeys doing ninja moves and stuff on them. But it's very similar to Hey, That's My Fish, but with like a little bit of special abilities, easier to set up. It's just a deck of cards. So if you like Hey, That's My Fish, where you're like, oh, this is just so fiddly, try Ninja Camp.
Yeah. All right. Tiffany, did you have anything else you wanted to sneak onto the list here?
No, I think the only other game that I would think of when I think of nature is not a super popular game. It would be Trekking National Forests. It's an easy game. It's super simple. You just collect your cards and you go around. You go to the forests and you get points. And but it's fun and it's super light and enjoyable, and it teaches you about the parks. So I enjoyed it for that reason with my son.
Yeah, I thought about this a little bit. I just feel like, I don't know, like parks, I just feel that parks in there, and in Trekking the National Park, I don't feel that theme that much, really.
So it's literally right behind you, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in fact, a lot of them you can see, like there's Cascadia over there, Wingspan's above her shoulder, Mariposas that we spoke of. Yeah, there's a ton of them on your screen.
So Trekking Through the National Parks, I think that's Underdog Games, maybe, right? Anyway, they made Trekking Through History. And Trekking Through History has done really well, and people say it's very thematic. And so the publisher actually went on Board Game Geek and was like, hey, we don't know why Trekking Through the National Parks doesn't do just as well as Trekking Through History. We want to revitalize it. We want to bring it back in a new edition, but we want to get it to the level of Trekking Through History. So what does everybody think? Like, why? What do you want to see in the next version? Why do you think this is better than that, etc.? So hey, I think there's going to be a new version probably of it coming down the pipe, and that version could be, let's say, more thematic on the line, along the lines of parks. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Yeah. So,
well, our buddy told us yesterday that he played Trekking in National Parks with his group, and then they also played Trekking Around the World, I think. Yeah. And he said that is much better. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting because I think trekking the national park is a good game.
Yeah.
I just didn't really think it really screams nature. It's about national parks, but it almost feels like it's like, yeah, it's not really about national parks. It's about going around the map and doing things. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we're way off topic.
Well, I mean, sort of. I think the only thing that for me is I fully expect that I'm going to really, I mean, obviously, because I do research before I buy games, but I really expect that I'm going to like Earth. So, you know, and you don't get much more nature than the entire planet of Earth, right? But
That's my most anticipated nature game.
yeah,
exactly. It's burning a hole through the table right now. I really want to play it. I'm expecting to really love it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I might be able to. Maybe if FedEx decides to actually deliver it, maybe I'll get like an unboxing or something out of it, you know, on the channel this week. But we'll see. I don't know. I can't speak for FedEx. I used to work at FedEx, so I would love to speak about FedEx, but I won't do that here. That's another aside.
But then he got stranded on an island for a couple of years. It was rough.
Yeah. Where's Wilson? I got him around here somewhere. No. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, there you go. There's a whole bunch of nature-themed games. Nature is a great theme to pull people into the hobby, so feel free to use any of these games to do that, except Arboretum. And but anyway, until our next Gaming Through Themes video, I'm Steven, that's Tiffany, that's Erock, that's John. We are all in the Discord channel. If you didn't get to join us live to talk to us here during this video, come to our Discord channel. I'll put a link in the comments below. You can come join us there, and we'll continue to talk about games until I end up 6 feet under. So there you go.
So you're replaced with Stephen Bonacore.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. Well, he is the podfather. He might put me 6 feet under. A little dirt nap for you, Mr. Eckman.
You like Earth? I'll show you Earth.
All right. Well, until the next time, thanks for joining us.
Bye. See you next time.